question. I've been thinking about this for some time since this is this is strictly an agentic course. I was like wondering, will we ever have to create models ourselves? I'm like, thank you very much.
Well, you don't have to build models to build agents. You will typically use LLMs as the reasoning core, but if you need your agents to have a skill that requires a model, and there's no ready-made model that you can wrap as that skill as a tool, then you definitely have to train one. So it really depends on your use case, but you do not have to train models to build agents. Of course, sometimes the available LLM may need some fine tuning or something. If that's the case, you could fine tune, but you can typically build a full-fledged agent, push it to production, and work with it without having to train any model. Does that answer your question, Kenneth?
Yes, sir. Thank you, please.
All right. So we move to what we have today. Today we will start with prompt chains. We mentioned prompt chaining as one of the prompting approaches in the last class, one of prompting techniques. So today we'll start by looking at prompt chains a bit in more detail. So a prompt chain is really like, let's assume you have a task that has multiple steps, a task that can be decomposed into multiple steps such that the results from one step serves as the input to the next step. So prompt chaining allows you to solve such problems by decomposing for each step you write a prompt, and the output of that step, the results from that step provides context for the next step. That's one way of ensuring that you get a reliable output, effective output, particularly considering the limitations of LLMs. If you just give it for such problems, if you just give it the entire problem as a whole, it may likely suffer some failure, it may hallucinate or something, but by breaking that into different steps and um, allowing the LLM to solve it in bits, iteratively to solve the problem, would that be what's the right term? Well, I can't get that right then, but essentially to solve it one step at a time, step by step. For each step, you write a prompt, what you're really doing. For each of those steps, you write a prompt, and each subsequent step depends on the result from the previous step as part of its context. What you're doing is prompt chaining. Yeah, here I have that an analogy that it's like a recipe with other steps. And you want to make some food, you prep the ingredients. Maybe you need to saute this one, you need to steam this one. So you do those in steps, and then there's a step where you combine this and this, step where you split it and all that. Something, something like that. And the benefits of prompt chaining is that decomposition, you can decompose the problem, you can mix for modular problem solving, and it also improves transparency in that you can make the LLM to give you, or let's not say LLM, or your agent to give you the outputs at each step. So you can see what is happening rather than you just wait and you see the final result, which if there was a problem in an intermediate step, you would not know. So with prompt chaining, you can um, make your agent to provide the results of intermediate steps, making it more transparent so that you can know how well each step is going. And if there's any problem in an intermediate step, you're able to see that. And if it's necessary to intervene, you can do that. Any questions so far? Okay, no question. So we move ahead. So there are a number of prompt chain patterns. I have 4 here, namely plan and execute, react, self-refine, and reflection loop patterns. The plan and execute pattern is suitable for okay, in plan and execute, the agent first generates the plan for achieving the intent. First generates a plan for achieving the goal, for achieving the task, for solving the task, and then it executes that plan. So for you to use this pattern, you first have a prompt for generating the plan. And even for generating the plan, you can have a chain of prompts depending on how complex that plan is. If the generation of the plan is something that would can be decomposed into multiple steps. If it's not so simple, if it's complex and can be decomposed into multiple steps, multiple steps where one follows from the other. It can even be a chain of um, prompts, right? And then even the execution. Sometimes the execution is not just simple. It could also be complex where you could decompose it into multiple consecutive steps, right? So for a task that a multi-step task, plan and execute pattern is one good pattern to use. So for each of the steps, you write a prompt. For each of the steps, you write a prompt, bearing in mind that each successive step would use the result from the previous step as part of its context. Then for React is actually short for reason and then act. So React is it involves interleaving reasoning with two calls. So it's suitable for tasks that involve retrieval or code execution. Here you have a prompt for reasoning, as in the agent reasons, it analyzes the user, the input, identifies the intent, and definitely generates a plan for achieving it, and then it acts. The act part is now where it makes use of tools. That tool could be maybe retrieving context, if like in a RAG scenario. RAG is retrieval augmented generation. It could be calling an external API to retrieve information. It could be triggering an actuator, maybe putting on your coffee maker or something. That's where the React pattern comes in. Then for the self-refine pattern, self-refine, the agent, it critiques some text and then it rewrites it. So maybe if you have some text, the agent will critique that text, and based on that critique, it rewrites the text. This is suitable for scenarios where say you want to summarize some text, or you want to do some creative writing, or even technical writing, something like that. You use self-refine. So if there's already some text, the agent critiques it, and then based on the critique, he writes it. So you would have a prompt or even a chain of prompts for the critique, as the case may be, and then you have a prompt or even a chain of prompts for the rewriting part of the task. And then reflection loop. Reflection loop is works best or is suitable for memory-based agents in a situation where the agent is learned from previous experience, from previous context, so that it can improve over time based on those previous context. Let me use that term. So it's only suitable for memory agents that have memory, because it reflects based on what the history, right? Based on history, it updates its context, and it can refine its strategy and how it handles the task. Any questions so far? Okay,
Yes,
go
sir.
ahead,
I have a
Kenneth.
question, sir.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, sir. So,
Can you hear me, sir?
based on the so
I
based on the
think there are
task that
two
you
persons
gave us
speaking.
yesterday.
Somebody is saying, "Can you hear me?" But I know that I had asked Kenneth to speak. So when Kenneth is done, Adobe's hand is raised. Adobe will speak. Then the other person who was speaking, I think that will be Olanrewaju, because I see his mic is on. So then Olanrewaju will speak next. So Kenneth, followed by Adobe, and then Olanrewaju. So Kenneth, go ahead.
Okay, sir. So, based on the task that you gave us yesterday, I would want to know, does it fall under any of this? Thank you, please.
Okay. It doesn't really fall under any of these. The essence of that task, it was, well, if you could stretch to say it falls under, I don't know, reflection loop, maybe, if you consider your own memory now to be part of the agent, because you are refining the prompt to get better results, right? But it doesn't really fall under this, honestly. It was just about you seeing um, how improving your prompts improves the output you get from an LLM, and that's why the task asks you to iteratively iterate through the prompt, improving it at each iteration. And if you did the assignment, you would see that with each improvement in the prompt, you get a better response from the LLM. So that assignment was not about prompt chaining. It was the same task, the same subtask that you were solving, just that you were improving the prompt at each iteration. What prompt chaining is, for that task or subtask, you can break it up into smaller um, segments, if I may say that, and where each one builds on the one before it. So you chain them, you solve this first step. Okay, instead of segment step, you solve this first step. The result of that step forms the input to the next step. And the result of that one forms the input to the next step. And you continue step by step by step until you arrive at the final result. So that was not about prompt chaining. Does that answer your question, Kenneth?
Yes, please. Thank
Okay.
you.
Adobe, go ahead then.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So the planner executes. It's not quite clear to me. Can you just throw more light?
Plan and execute is if you have a task, right, that is, well, all of them for prompt chaining, it's tasks that are inherently multi-step, right? They are inherently multi-step. That's where prompt chaining comes in. For plan and execute, it's just about you generate a plan and then you execute. You can provide one prompt that says generate a plan and execute. You can provide one prompt that says execute without generating a plan. That means you're implying that, well, you could reason internally or whatever, but the risk is that you may get the LLM may hallucinate, right? But plan and execute is a prompt chaining approach where you split that task into a planning step and an execution step, right? React could also be seen in the light of a planning step and an execution step. The only thing is that in React, the execution involves the use of tools. For example, talking about plan and execute, if you are to if you're given a complex function and you're asked to solve that function for the independent variable, or for the dependent variable, actually, you typically you won't just, after reading through the question, give the answer, would you? Adobe, would you?
No. No.
You would go step by step in solving that problem, right? Now,
Yes.
you could, well, typically when you're solving that problem, you would already have, if you have learned about how to solve those kind of problems, you already know the algorithm for solving that problem. And essentially what you're doing is just to apply that algorithm to the specific case you have. Now in plan and execute, what your prompts, you have a prompt for generating the algorithm where you ask the LLM to generate the algorithm, generate a plan. First, this is what I want. You state what you want to be done, and then you have a prompt to say, generate a plan to achieve this intent. That's a separate task. And you have another prompt to say, based on this plan, execute that generated plan to achieve the task. So you have a plan generation step and a plan execution step. That would typically, in this case, it does not involve using external tools. It does not involve retrieving data or context from any external environment. It's just all internal to the NLM, all internal to the agent. But you're saying generate a plan as a step, execute that plan as another step. And I was also saying, depending on how complex the problem is, even the plan generation step can actually be multi-step, in which case it's not just a prompt for plan generation, it could even be a chain of prompts for plan generation. The execution could also be so complex that it won't just be a prompt for the plan execution, it could be a chain of prompts for the plan execution. I don't know whether that clarifies the confusion.
Yes, it helped a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome. Molara Waju, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you, sir. Much of the question I wanted to ask was what you addressed while answering her I wanted to ask because I was seeing should I say, intersection between plan and execution and reasoning and act, because I feel in planning, some reasonings are involved, and I typically thought executing also mean acting, but you clarify that acting actually calls for using the tool. I think that differentiated it. So the other part of the question I want to ask now, sir, is that yes, I understand this is prompt chaining, and you have told us that the use case that we have at time to determine uh, the particular pattern we use. What I want to ask basically is that does it mean that every problem at hand that I want to solve must follow or must speak in a particular order? Or we can have a problem that we not need plan execution, or just go to reasoning and acting, then go to reflection, or they must follow this order or a number of them.
Your question is actually not so clear. Let me see if I can disambiguate. Are you asking whether every problem must follow prompt chaining?
No, sir. I'm trying to ask that must every problem follow plan and execute, then go to reason and act, then go to self-refine, or it can be plan and execute, then jump to self-refine based on the task at hand.
No, these are different patterns. These are different prompt chaining patterns. Based on your problem, you need to decide, do you want to use the plan and execute pattern? Or do you want to use the reflection loop pattern? Or do you want to use the self-refine pattern or the react pattern or a combination of two or more of them? So they can be mutually exclusive. They can be used, well, not mutually, they can be used on each one can be used on its own.
Independently.
Yeah, it's not that you move from one to another. No, they are independent from chaining patterns.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, you're welcome. Olaniwaju, your hand is still raised in one of your devices. Okay, thank you. So we move ahead. Prompt templates. Before we talk about prompt templates, I would just like us to go back to look at prompting techniques, just to emphasize that prompt chaining is just one prompting technique. Depending on the task, you can just use instruction prompting. You can use row prompting. Even while using prompt chaining, you can use row prompting. You can use zero shot, one shot, or few shot prompting. You can use chain of thought prompting. You can use context grounding. It depends on your use case. What you need to decide what would work best. And typically you may need to iterate, trying to get the best result. So prompt chaining is just one aspect and one technique. We are taking it in a little bit more detail because these other ones are somewhat more straightforward. Well, somewhat more straightforward than it. And for solving complex problems, which is usually what you want to do when you want more like the reason for wanting to automate and all that, you find that you may tend to use prompt chaining quite a bit. Olariwa, you had raised your hand. Do you still have something you want to say, or was that
Yes,
in
I
the
was
air?
just contemplating so that I don't drag the class back. But what actually came to thank you for bringing this slide back, sir, because it's actually. So I understand that prompt chaining is just one of the various techniques, like we have row prompting and co. So my point now is that comparing COT prompting and prompt chaining, because I remember you told us the chain of thought is when we have a task, we break it down into different steps. I remember you mentioned that. I
No,
hope I'm
you're not
correct.
breaking it down. In chain of thought, you're asking the LLM to to provide a solution in step by step. So it's just you're not breaking up your prompt. You're giving it one prompt. I want you to do this. Please give me your answer, follow step-by-step reasoning in your response. So
Yes,
it's
that's what I
going
mean,
to,
sir. I'm drawing a line between it and reasoning and acting, and in fact, planning and execute. They seem to be the same to me. That's why I appreciate you for bringing these steps up, this
they
slide.
are not. That's what I'm trying to explain. In chain of thought prompting, it is one prompt, but you are
Okay,
specifying to the LLM that it's a response. It should provide the reasoning, step-by-step reasoning for its response. That's what that chain of thoughts mean. Its
okay,
thinking is going to provide the chain of thoughts that leads to the final answer it gives you.
okay.
But in prompt chaining, you yourself are breaking up the problem into distinct steps. And for each step, you're providing a prompt.
Okay.
So one prompt to each step. So that's for each step now, the prompt for step A, you can actually apply chain of thoughts in the prompt for step A. In the prompt
Okay.
for step B, you can apply both one shot. You can
Prompting.
include a one shot example. You could apply role prompting. You can apply context grounding and still chain of thoughts in the prompt for step B, and so on.
Very clear now, sir. Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Okay. Welcome. All right. Now, prompts templates. Prompts are essentially strings. Now, as you for automation, the context can change. I'll give an example. The assignment that I gave at the last class, which the deadline was today, I'm currently working on automating providing feedback for that assignment. The assignment really has no pass or fail, right? It's about providing feedback to each person, and maybe we may actually even get to look at a few of the submissions that came together in class. Now, each person has a different response. It's the same assignment, but each person, for those that submitted, has a different response. Now, let's assume I want to prompt ChatGPT to um, evaluate, let's say, Olanrewaju's response. And I write the whole prompt, blah, 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 including the response from Olanrewaju, and I ask it to critique or evaluate whatever it is. It gives its response. I now say, oh, I would like to have it evaluate or critique Kenneth's response. I now have to go and repeat the entire prompt, now removing Olanrewaju's response and slotting in Kenneth's own. And so for each one I'm asking it, I have to do a completely fresh text. Now, if you're trying to write an agent, to build an agent, that involves some level of automation. Now, in this prompt, almost everything is the same, except for the path that involves the actual response from the trainee. That's where a prompt template comes in, right? The prompt template provides a reusable prompt structure with placeholders for parts that are variable. For example, summarize the following text in N bullet points, and then you provide a placeholder. Now, the N is a placeholder, and you also provide a placeholder for text, the text to be summarized. Now, you can use this for whatever combination of N and text. As against, summarize the following text in 5 bullet points. You include the text, and then summarize the following text in 3 bullet points. You include a random text. Summarize the following text in 10 bullet points. You include the following text. Prompt templating allows you to have a reusable structure, a reusable prompt structure, where everything is the same except for some parts that are variable. So that based on the particular context, you can supply the values for those variable parts. And so you reuse that structure. And that's why it's called a template. Another example, as I have here, is act as a placeholder for role, given placeholder for input. That's full stop. Given placeholder for input, produce output format. Here now, the variable parts are the role. Here now you provide a persona, right? Remember when we talked about what makes a good prompt, which it's also a prompting technique, right? You're providing it with a role, a persona, given you're providing a context, that's the input. Produce, so you're specifying the output format. So you can use this same prompt for any combination of role, input, and output format. What are the advantages of prompt templating? Consistency across multiple users or tasks. So each time you're using it, you have a consistent template. It's only those variable parts that are different for that particular use case. It makes it easier to debug and improve your prompts. So if there are some part of the non-variable, should I say, part of non-variable parts like tautology, if there are some parts of the prompt templates that you want to change, maybe because in your iterating through the prompts, you see that this wording gives a better response from the LLM. Once you change it in template, it affects any time you use the prompt, that template, it's already reflected, as against duplicating the prompt, where if you now make a change, you have to go to everywhere you have that duplicated prompt. It's similar to like a dry principle. Similar to dry, don't repeat yourself, right? It's easier to debug. Okay, that's what I talked about. Debugging and improvement are easier. And then it's a foundation for automation. I think I already explained that one as we were talking about. So platforms like LangChain and Creo and so on, they depend a whole lot on prompt templating for automation. Any question so far? Okay. Now, what are good prompt template design practices? Firstly, your variable names, that's the names you have in the placeholders, they should be clear. Well, clear variable naming is one standard in software development. You should have clear variable names, and your variable, well, clarity is also being that is representative. And of course, well, in this case, the important thing is, does the name you give that variable represent, is it clear? Anybody reading that, does the person actually understand clearly what it represents? That makes the template better. Because if somebody has to start guessing, or if so is the easier it is to misunderstand what that stands for, the less how will I say, the less useful your prompt template is. Now, in prompt templating, you should avoid hard coding values that you might want to change. Any value that would typically change at the point of providing that prompt to the model, you should provide a placeholder for that value rather than hard coding it. And then you should test for edge cases. For example, short versus long inputs. How does that affect the model's response? You should test for edge cases. and then you should add clear. You should have clear sections in your prompt template. You should have clear sections covering the important components that a prompt should have. Sections like instructions, sections like instructions. It should be clear what you are asking the model to do. Context, of course, we talked about good properties of characteristics of good prompt. You should clearly provide those things in your template. Of course, like we also mentioned when we're talking about characteristics of a good prompt, you should specify your output format. Well, how explicitly you specify depends on your use case. The specification can be as simple as in 3 sentences, specifying that it should be 3 sentences long, or that it should be 2 to 5 sentences. It can be as explicit as specifying that it should be a JSON object and giving the schema of that object, or it should be a YAML and providing specifications for that. So how explicit that specification is depends on your use case. But one thing too, we should note that, well, some people have opined that JSON is really more for human readability than YAML, and that JSON essentially wastes tokens. You should, particularly if you're using a paid service, for each unnecessary token, you are wasting funds, right? So YAML audible.
Yes, you are now. At some point, I couldn't hear.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I, my connection switched because of okay. Adobe, is it still breaking?
It's okay now.
All right. So I was
Uh,
it's more
again, I can't
efficient
hear
use of
you.
tokens than the LLM. Okay, just give me a few minutes. Let me ensure I move to a stable
All right, sir.
network. Just give me a few minutes. Just a short moment for my main connection to come back on, and then we'll move ahead. Okay, am I audible now? Is it clear now?
Very clear.
Okay, all right. So I'll share my screen again. Yeah, I was talking about, what were we talking about? What were we talking about before we went off? I think it was what makes a good prompt,
Yes,
right?
practice. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So let's consider this. Let's consider this prompt. Role. You are a data analyst. That provides a persona, right? Role-based prompting. Task. Analyze the data set below. If you look at here, it said provide clear sections in your prompt template. Abdullahi, you want to ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, please.
Sir, before your network got missing, you are talking about the JSON file and the MR file. You are talking about one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, sir.
Okay. I was just saying that YAML makes more efficient use of tokens. So if in the particular step, the output of that step is going to be consumed by a machine, let's say by another LLM, right? If the output is going to be consumed by an LLM, then it's more efficient for you to specify a YAML output than to specify a JSON output. But if the output is going to be used by, say, a REST endpoint or something, then JSON output is better, right? Either way, if the machine doesn't really care, it can produce either one. But YAML is more efficient in using tokens. So yes, the difference might not be much for a single run, but over time, you find that difference in tokens could sum up to a bit of money. So if it's something that would require a human being reading it, or is going to be provided to an external system that expects JSON, then use JSON. But if it's something that's going to be consumed by a machine, another LLM, YAML is more efficient. That was just what I was saying. Any question on that, or on anything we've said so far before we now look at the example prompts that I would like us to discuss? Okay, so let's move ahead. So this prompt, it has role-based prompt in here, a persona, data analyst. You are a data analyst. Before I go into that, you can see that it has clear sections. The prompt has clear sections. There's a role section. There's a task section. The task section is actually like instruction. There's a section where you provide the input context. And then there's a section where it specifies the output format or format constraint as the case may be, if you prefer that. So the role here is you are a data analyst that provides a persona. Task, analyze the data set summary below. That's the instruction. That's what you want it to do. Input will be the data summary. Now, the role and the task are the same for that particular use case. It's the same role, it's the same task. But because you want, it's something that you want your, let's say you're building an agent that a data analyst agent, it will be analyzing data set summaries and giving you some result based on its analysis. The data summary that is analyzed will change as depending on the particular circumstance. So you provide a placeholder for this summary. Here it's named data summary. And then output, write a end sentence. The end itself can change based on your use case. So you put a placeholder for it. So it could be a 2-sentence, it could be a 5-sentence, it could be a 20-sentence report highlighting the trends and anomalies in the data set. That's a prompt. Clear, structured. You have adequate context. Well, except you have a more complex use case. So the question here now is, or before I ask the question, do we see any problem with this prompt? Can you spot any issue with this prompt? Can anyone spot any issue with this prompt? If you can, just unmute yourself and let us know.
Okay, so we didn't assign the format we want for the output.
Okay, but we said write a end sentence report highlighting the trends and analyzing that's we've already given it the format. We want an end sentence report. We've provided an output format constraint. It's a report, it must have this number of sentences. Remember when I was talking about output formats, I said how explicit your output format will be depends on your use case. Right? In this case, we are not looking for YAML or JSON or whatever else. I mean, it's just a free form text. The only constraint is in the number of sentences. So we have specified the output format, and we even have a section for it, clearly labeled as output. Okay, here's let me point out one issue with this prompt. One of the failure modes or one of the weaknesses of LLMs is in counting. LLMs are bad at counting. So when you say write let's say n is 5, a 5-sentence report, LLMs are not good at counting. It can produce 10, it can produce 6, it can produce, if you're so specific, 5. You say a 5-sentence report, what if it's 4? Has it met that requirement? What if it's 6? Has it met that requirement? So if you're asking an LM to do something that requires counting, it's best to be a little flexible. So you could say, write a report of about n sentences. So if you say about 5 sentences, 3 sentences could be fine, 7 sentences or 8 sentences could be fine. Yes, you really want around 5, but it mustn't be exactly 5. But if you specify that it has to be 5, there's a large likelihood that the LLM may truncate its response even before getting to 5 because it doesn't know how, it's not good at counting. And there's a high likelihood that it will not even give you a 5-sentence response in the first place. LLMs are not good at counting. They are not good at counting. They are not good at calculation. Those are two of their weaknesses. So can anybody see any other issue with this prompt?
Can I try, sir?
Go ahead, please.
I don't know. Based on the structure, as in starting with consider the analysis plotted below and the triple ticks, and we have the role defined. We
No,
have the
the triple back ticks, right?
no, sir, I'm not
Consider the
complaining about
okay, go ahead.
I'm not complaining about the triple ticks, sir, back ticks, sir.
Okay, go ahead. Let me be sure I
Okay.
understand you before.
All right, sir. So what I was trying to look at is that the input is a placeholder with data summary, and now the output is requested to write a end sentence report highlighting the trends in data set. The inputs are not referenced in the placeholders were not referenced, were not called, so to say, the outputs to be called for.
Well, I think you're misunderstanding the prompt template. The entire text starting from role and ending in anomalies in the data set, that is the prompt template. And that is what you feed to the LLM. Of course, when feeding it to the LLM, you have to provide concrete values for the placeholders, data summary, and N, right? So the entire prompt you're going to provide to the LLM will be start from role, you're a data analyst, and ends in anomalies in the data set. But before providing that prompt to the LLM, you have to provide actual values for data summary and N. I don't know. Is that clear to us?
Very clear, sir.
Now, what we have here is a prompt template. So you cannot have actual values, or you will not have actual values for data summary and N. They are placeholders in the prompt template. But when you want to use that prompt template to generate an actual prompt that you feed to the LLM, that's when you supply values to those variables that you've provided as placeholders. I don't know whether
Yeah, it's very clear, sir.
that helps. Okay. So that is not an issue. The design of or the nature of prompt templates is that you will have placeholders in them. So that is not an issue. Okay, let's move ahead. One question is, what could go wrong if data summary, the actual value that you supply to data summary, is very long? Let's assume that it's a whole lot of data. What could go wrong if the actual value you supply to data summary when you're generating the concrete prompts, the actual value of data summary is so long? What could go wrong? Yeah, Trust, go ahead, please.
So if the data summary is too long, I think from the explanation you mentioned in the past, every LLM has a context window. And so if the data summary exceeds that context window because it's too long, it might not complete the task, or it might just do a half-hearted effort and then not do the remaining. So that is one thing that could happen. Then another thing that could happen is that hallucination might occur because of a long data. I faced that issue before too. I faced that anytime I post a very long, maybe an article that is very long, and I tell it to perform something, probably a summary or do something, or even generate a very long article, the quality of the output drops than if I should reduce it to probably paragraphs. So that's what I've noticed about it. So it just shows that it performs excellently if we give it short things and then we iterate. That is, we keep giving it that. So I think someone could do is to break down that summary into chunks and be feeding it.
Okay, so now that's a very clear thing, and he has already provided a solution, right? Once the entire prompt is part of the model's context, right? So if data summary becomes so large that the prompt exceeds the context, there's the likelihood for the model to start hallucinating. And of course, hallucination affects the quality of the output. So one way you could go around this is by chunking the data. And by chunking the data, you could now, instead of just saying analyze the entire data set, you could have it analyze each chunk separately. So it creates an analysis of each chunk. And then maybe at the end, you now have it combine all the different chunk analysis and now summarize that into a final analysis. So in that way, you have broken up the problem into steps, and like that, you can benefit from prompt chaining. This is a practical example of how you can use prompt chaining to overcome some of the limitations of LLMs. Other people raised their hands while Trust was trying to speak. Did he speak your mind?
He spoke the entire context window, sir.
Okay. Now, the next question is, what if um, instead of giving a number like a 3-sentence report, a 5-sentence report, instead of giving a number, you give a color. Write a green sentence report highlighting the trends and anomalies in the data set. What would happen? What could go wrong? Yeah, we can actually try it, right? Okay, somebody wants to speak. Adobe, go ahead, please.
I think that's one of the good ways, or should I say best ways to confuse LLM, because it might actually see that task in a different way, no longer numbers, but color, especially if the colors has to do with behavior, emotions, and all that. So it will cause it to have unexpected behavior, like giving out what is not expected.
Yeah, Olarewaju.
Yes, sir. I would say, just to add to what she has said, I think the response or what we may experience may depend on the way the LLM was trained by the system prompt. It was trained not to guess when it's confused. Might just no answer or just give a response that this is confusing, impute a digit or something, rather than generate some plausible or senseless response and hallucination. Because this does not seem as something that may cause hallucination. Because, I mean, if you say red, write a red sentence report. It doesn't make any sense. But like I said, so rather than writing what is not sensible, depending on the way the LLM was trained, the system prompt to say this is not correct, you write, give a better value for the number of sentences, something like that.
Oh, okay. Now, yeah, Lawrence, you speak, but I just want to make clarification. What you mentioned, depending on the way the model was trained, like in the system message. The system message is not training, right? Excuse me. The system message is not training.
It's
It's
prompting.
just Yeah, it's still part of the prompt. It provides part of the context for the model. But in this case, I would assume that this is the entire prompt. There's no other prompt. There's no system message. There's no other message. This is the entire prompt to the LLM. That's because if you bring up a system message, then that's an unknown, and we don't know. Of course, it's one important thing about using a system message is a system message is for the developer. The user message is for the user. So a system message is the way for you as a developer to um, to specify the model or agent's behavior such that it works well, it works predictably, no matter what input it's given. Now, one just as we have SQL injection attacks, there's also prompt injection, where if you have a prompt template, so people can try to put an entire prompt as a value for a placeholder, which could lead to different things. So one way you can get around that is from your system message. You provide guardrails against things like that. Anyway, that's an aside. I would actually like us to try this, right? Instead of data set summary, could we change it to text, right? Analyze the text below. You provide text instead of data set summary. Then you say write a end sentence summary highlighting the whatever. I just want us to try a modification of this prompt, because if we say data set summary, then we have to use some data set. I would like us to modify it. We do that on our individual systems now. We modify it to use text instead of data set summary. And the output is not going to be a report, but a summary of that text. So what we are going to have is, maybe let me type it in the Discord channel. Is that fine?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just a moment. Let me type that in there. So I want us to run that. Okay, but before we can run that, okay, no problem. That's fine. We can do that. We don't need to use it as a template. But when we are running it, we'll actually provide the value of the text ourselves, and we also provide a value for n. First, we run it with n as a number, and then we run it with n as a color. Then we'll discuss the but actually I don't need to actually type it. You can be creative and adjust it yourself, because when we're discussing, you tell us what prompt you ran, and then you tell us what result you got. So let's go ahead. You can use ChatGPT if you want. You can use Gemini if you want. You can use Meta AI on WhatsApp if you want. Or you can use your model on Olama if you want, whichever one is convenient for you. The important thing is, let's see what happens when instead of a number, you use a color for n, or you even use a shape for n. Let's say write a circle sentence report. If you have a result, please indicate so that you can tell us what you got. We just have 8 minutes to the end of the class, so well, we are not going to take so long. Yeah, while we are waiting for that, just to say there are some tasks that I haven't yet graded. I have to map out a block of time to grade the tasks. So I haven't yet been able to map out time to grade those whose tasks were submitted after I had graded um the ones that are already done. So I'll try to map out some time over the weekend to grade those. But note that there's going to be another promotion task by this weekend to move to the next stage. And for those who had submitted their tasks and the grade didn't get up to the cutoff, you can redo the task. You can redo the task. If you would like feedback on um, the one you already submitted, please DM me and I'll provide you with that feedback. But please, if you have not submitted task 0, please do that ASAP if you intend to submit it, because after I block out this next, I grade the next, the ones I haven't done already. I don't know when I'll be able to block out time to grade task 0 again. And I don't think I want to be grading tasks that 0 when we're already in tasks 2 and 3. So please, let's try to, if you haven't done so, try to complete yours and submit before the end of tomorrow. If you are to repeat your own, try to complete that before the end of tomorrow, please. So that I block out time I can complete. I know I'm done with task 0. So I can face task 1 and go ahead. Adobe, go ahead, please.
So is it in response to the task he asked us to
I
do
know,
now?
I know.
So should I go?
Yes, please
Okay,
go ahead.
okay. So when I use the number, yes, when I use the number, it was able to output 3 sentences to summarize the data set. And then when I used a color, blue to be precise, it says that a blue sentence report cannot be generated because blue is a valid, is not a valid number of sentences.
Hey,
That's what I heard.
what model did you run this on?
GPT um 5.
Okay, GPT-5. All right. Has anyone else? Okay, GPT model can process it. That's what Chukudi got. Yes, but now go ahead.
Yes, good evening. For mine, they actually, I mean, for the first, when I entered the figure, it gave the right response. But when I tried the shape, it ignored it and still gave the right response. And then I went on to Gemini and even used a purple, a purple parallelogram sentence report, and it also gave a right response.
When you say right response now, what do you mean right response?
Like an actual report. So the prompt was, you're a data analyst on malaria trends in Nigeria. Write a
Okay.
purple parallelogram sentence report highlighting trends and anomalies.
Okay, so it provided trends and anomalies, just
Yes,
that
it did.
now it decided on its own how long it would be.
Yes.
Okay. And on the average, how many sentences was the report?
This is just a sentence, a full sentence with like 5 commas.
Okay, so 1 sentence.
Yes, just one sentence.
Okay, for both models.
For both models, yes.
Okay, but
Same here as well.
when you use a number, how many sentences do you ask for?
5 sentences.
And
And
how
let
many
me
sentences
see.
do you give?
1, 2, 3, for 5 actually. 5 sentences.
Okay. So you see that it essentially, I think it essentially ignored that n and just provided a sentence when you gave a non-number as n. But then depending on the model, I mean, from what we looking at your own result and Adobe, some models are smart enough to go ahead to provide a report. Some are just, I don't know whether I would say which one I would say is smart now. Some are careful. I don't know how many sentences they want. I just tell you, hey, this is not a number. Okay, Chukudi says from GPT-5, says I can do that, but I need two things first. What is the data set? How many sentences should N be? But you Chukudi, you just pasted this prompt template into ChatGPT without
Yeah.
modifying it.
Yes, that's what I did.
Yeah, but that's not what we were asked to do. We are asked to supply values. Why I had said instead of using data set summary, use a text and ask it to summarize that text. So because if you say data set, you need to supply a data set, and we don't have a ready data set, right? So you're supposed to, you don't give the LLM a prompt template. You give it a concrete prompt that was generated from that template. And how do you generate the concrete prompt? By supplying actual values for the placeholders. So in the case of this prompt template we have, you need to supply an actual value for data summary and an actual value for n. So it's not the prompt template that you impute to the LLM. It is a concrete prompt that was generated based on that template.
Okay, sir.
So does anyone have any question on what we've done so far this week? It's already 10 o'clock. If we have any question, I'll try to answer the question. If we don't have any question, then we'll call it a night. I will be providing the task, the next promotion task by weekend. Yes, please go ahead.
All right, good evening, sir. So I've been trying to, I'm a product designer, and some of the things we've been using, I've not been getting them, but I've been trying. Like I try to research, but then the problem is I've not been able to download um all the applications needed, like the Python and all of that, because my former system got an issue. So I had a system with me. It's called i3 8 gig. I can't remember the settings. So can I use it, sir?
That's very doubtful. It's doubtful, but you could explore using code spaces. If you've been there the previous classes and you've been following the discussion on Discord, I know that we talked about if your system can't handle it, explore using code spaces. And we also mentioned that you actually need programming knowledge to be able to get the best value from this training.
So when you said programming knowledge, I actually did. I have a little knowledge of HTML and CSS. I don't know about Python and all of these things that you're writing.
It's not before we started, I had given a link to a basic Python tutorial. Did you try to go through that tutorial?
No, not yet.
Yeah, it was expected that you would do that before we started, because if you don't have that basic, ideally, we should all be reasonably accomplished developers so that we just move straight to agents. But we are trying to move gradually because not everybody has the same level of development experience. But if you can't program, it's going to be difficult. And that's why I provided that. I've been providing those links. Those are things you should do extra work to cover up so that you can follow. We can't start
All right.
teaching programming. It can't work. You can
All
still follow, but you need to do a lot of extra work. And the earlier the better, because the further we go, the more difficult it becomes if you don't have the prerequisite knowledge.
right. I'll go through the chat to see those links. Thank you, sir.
Okay, that's great. Abdullahi, please go ahead.
Okay, sir. My problem is with this Olama. I have downloaded the Olama and even downloaded the module. So if I write a text in the Olama application, it's not running.
Which model did you download?
The GMI 3 column 1 B.
That's about 800 MB.
Yes, sir.
What are your system specs?
Core i5 6th gen. I have 8 gig RAM and 128 SSD.
Two things may be the issue: your memory and your processor. Because Gemma 3.1 is really a small model, just about less than 1 gig. So
Yes.
I think what I would advise is try to explore setting up a CodeSpaces VM and running Olama there. Try to explore that.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Try to explore that. If you can set that up over this weekend, better, so that when you want to, you can work in CodeSpaces. At least I believe that you should be able to, the monthly limit should carry you through quite a bit.
Okay, who do you suggest, sir?
As I said, CodeSpaces, I said I believe that the monthly limits for the free tier on CodeSpaces should carry you quite a bit. There's a limit. I think it's 120 CPU hours or something.
Okay, all right. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Any other question? Yeah, Femi, you can like the Python stuff affecting your previous projects will probably because you didn't follow the guidelines we gave, right? And that was why we talked about having virtual environment, so that what you're doing in that virtual environment does not affect the rest of your system. I have three versions of Python in my laptop right now. None is affecting the other. And when the class where we talked about system setup, I know there was one person who was having a bit of challenge with, I think he had a version of Python, then he installed 3.14, but it got resolved there in the class. And the truth is that doing that is not a difficult thing. It's something that just a Google search can solve. So if it's messing up your system, I think you should reinstall the one you had before first, do a quick Google search, or reach out to one of the other members of the cohort who has been able to install it to guide you. But you can have multiple versions of Python on your system, and so long as you follow good practices, none will interfere with the other. If the only reason that you want to drop out, well, my point is, if the only reason you want to drop out is that you are unable to run multiple versions of your system, I don't think that's a strong reason enough to drop out. But then it's your call. unless there's some other reason. If it's about your system resources, I suggest you try CodeSpaces. As long as your system can get online, try to use CodeSpaces for running Olama and then running the code for this drone. Try first. If you're not unable to, then you know to try, but I'm sure you should be able to. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, unless there's any other question or contribution, I think we'll call it a night and then we'll meet again next week. But remember, we'll have promotion task that should be up tomorrow or next. All right. Good night. Okay, Adobe has question.
Yeah, thank you, sir. The issue I was complaining earlier today, I've responded to your DM regarding the memory stuff. So you can check it at your free time.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. I think I can stop the recording now.